Hi everyone.
Hi, Amy. How you doing?
Hi, everyone.
Hi, ladies.
Hi. It's really lovely to see you all. It's so nice to be able to sort of sit together and chat and not necessarily be talking about a project, so we can just sort of like catch up with each other and say hello.
That's definitely a real novelty. Definitely be missing the office banter and chit chat and conflab around the water cooler, so to speak.
Yeah, you don't have those sort of little conversations in the same way at the moment, do you? Really, when you're sort of on off project calls and.
No, it just seems wrong. Even though it's a natural part of working life to say, oh, did you watch this on TV, or did you read this article or something? But yeah, when you're
It's like you almost have to like call someone specifically, isn't it? That's the thing, to talk about something, and you don't have that the same sort of thing, so it's nice to all get together and have a chat.
Yeah, it's great. And I know that Pell's has sort of asked us to sort of, or invited us to come together and have a bit of chat about, sort of celebrating Women in History Month, and particularly women in engineering. And it's so nice that we can have a group of us together from, all over the company with different experiences and different backgrounds. So, I mean, I think it would just be really nice maybe if we all just sort of go in turn to sort of introduce ourselves, just say like who we are and what our roles are, and within engineering and within Pell's. Maddie, do you want to start us off?
Can do, yeah. So obviously I'm Maddie Frampton. I work usually in the Wakefield office, in the highways department, and I'm an assistant technician at the moment, and hopefully going to progress my career forward. I'm in the apprenticeship scheme, so
Brilliant.
Oh, nice one.
That's great. It's really nice to see apprentices coming into the business, and
Absolutely.
it's really lovely. Mita, do you want to introduce yourself?
My name's Mita Katecha. I'm a project manager in Pell Frischmann. I've been with the business for 2.5 years. I work in the Luton Highways office. I think I've worked with almost every single discipline within Pell Frischmann on a particular job, which I'll remain nameless. I think other than building structures, but near enough it's touched every single discipline. So I've probably worked with some of your colleagues over the last 2.5 years.
My name is Zainab Adigan. I work from the London office, and I am with the building structures team, and I'm a structural engineer.
Hi, I'm Eugene. I am a senior structural engineer in building sector, and I've been with Pell since 2015.
My name is Joanna, and I joined Pell Frischmann 2 years ago, and I'm a principal engineer, and I'm working on structures, on buildings sector.
I'm Amy Boucher. I'm the Technical Director for Contaminated Land and Waste in Construction for Pell's, and I'm based in the Exeter office, but a bit like Mita, I work with teams from across all of the disciplines and all of the offices, and I've been in Pell's for 18 years, or just over 18 years.
wow.
Yeah.
Very long time.
Yeah.
You don't look like you have.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks very much. I'm not quite sure how 18 years has sort of happened, really. It's gone so quick, and I've had different roles in that time, but it's sort of like, oh my goodness, I sort of suddenly realised that I'm not the newbie in the office anymore, and I've been here for a while now. Yeah, so I came to Pell's from another consultancy. So it wasn't my first consultancy position, but when I came into Pell's, I came in as an engineer. And then I became a specialist in contam land, because when I started off, we used to do geotech and a bit more contam land. So I was very much in the geotech team, but to do contaminated land. And then I became a senior, and then I got chartered. So I'm chartered with the Chartered Institute of Waste Management. And then after becoming a senior, I became a principal, and then I became an associate, and now I'm a technical director within Pell Frischmann, and I joined the senior leadership team in January. So done most of the grades, working my way through the grades. So how did you guys get into engineering?
Like I mentioned before, assistant technician at the moment, but I came in at 16, straight from school, to Pell Frischmann. It's my first engineering job. The way I managed to get into engineering is strange story. My brother's always wanted to be a doctor, so my mum took him to the Big Bang Science Fair at the NEC in Birmingham, and at the time I think I was around 10, and I got dragged along. I wasn't really interested in science and stuff like that, but there was a girl there, a representative for Airbus, doing sponsorships. And she was there in a boiler suit with military boots, and you know, at 10 years old, you're like, I've never seen a girl wear something like that. I didn't know girls could do things like that. So since then, I've been set on engineering. I wasn't sure what kind of engineering I wanted to go into, but that's what I wanted to do. So all the way through secondary school, that's what I wanted to do. And I approached Pell Frischmann when I left high school, and I was about to go to college and for a voluntary week of work experience. And after that, my now manager, Paul Milton, noticed that I was quite passionate about it and really wanted to go into it, and ended up offering me a job a week or two before I was meant to start college. So that's how I just said no to college and took a risk and went for it. And yeah, I'm really, really happy that I did. And 3 or 4 years down the line now, I'm really enjoying it, and I'm happy with how I do day release at Leeds College Building still, so I'm still in training.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really good.
Yeah, so I'm doing sort of bit of both worlds, really, learning on the job and learning in college as well, and I'm really, really, really enjoying it. So yeah, that's me.
I was going to say, do you find it a little bit difficult juggling with work and school?
A little bit, yeah. It's sort of logging off the computer and then having my tea, logging back on and starting my coursework, but it's all towards a good cause, and that's what I want. That's what I know I want to do, engineering. So I'm glad that I've managed to get into it that way, and I feel like you learn more on the job than you would do just doing a degree by itself, with tools such as AutoCAD and stuff, which I usually do at the moment. So yeah, really happy.
I think one of the most difficult things in joining the working world, regardless of gender or what have you, is that solid experience and understanding what you're letting yourself in for.
Yeah.
And I think that things like apprenticeships are so valuable. They give you a taster, and if it's not for you, that's fair enough. But at least you've had an opportunity to give it a go and decide for yourself whether this is it for you. Once you're locked into a degree,
that's it, isn't it?
you're in some ways you're almost stuck if you're not happy with it, and with tuition fees and what have you, it takes you down a road that can be quite constricting.
Do you think it made a difference, Maddie, seeing a woman offering roles in engineering?
Massively. That's why I wanted to sort of mention it and get it into this chat, because it is such a big thing for me that I am more or less the only girl in an engineering role in my team on my floor, it's quite daunting coming into a male-dominated environment. I feel I can hold my own a little bit because I've been brought up with all my cousins and my brother and everything. I'm the only girl in my family, kids-wise, so I've had to hold my own in that respect. So I've tried to transfer that through into my job, and it is hard though, and you really do wish there was more females around, and to have that support network and relatability with your experience and stuff. But yeah, it was important seeing that girl at Airbus, because I think if I hadn't seen her, I probably wouldn't have. I think my life would have taken a completely different path. I really don't think I'd have got into engineering because there wasn't much encouragement at my school for girls in STEM, so they didn't really take me seriously when I said I wanted to do it. So if it wasn't for that, it would, you just little things, little moments in your life that just make such a difference, don't they? It's like the butterfly effect or something like that, I think it's called. And
it's STEM ambassadors and STEM going into schools and talking to people. It's so important. I not recently, but a couple of years ago, I did quite a few events going to careers fairs and so on, and it's just so important to see a good role model. you look on TV and you have certain role models, appropriate or not, depending on your point of view. But certainly in engineering, I think it's quite hard to find, or well, not hard to find. It's just it's very low key. You know, you don't go and say, oh, you know, I've just got my engineering degree and you know, post it all over LinkedIn and Facebook and what have you. You know, it's just not really the done thing.
How did you get into engineering, Joanna?
Well, for me, it was quite natural actually. So I always liked. So my first contact, I think it was like playing with Legos and like starting build structure straight away. And this was just because my father, so he just gave me like old Legos that he had, and then I straight away started really enjoying it to put together things. And then I just had always an interest for that kind of shows that passes on the TV about the materials, and then the architect speaking about the building and how it did it, and then all the coordination with the engineer and then with the services engineer, and then I just thought, wow, this is what I want to do because it's just so interesting. So it was how I started. And during school I actually tried to go first would be like architecture, because the first impact is like, oh, is more a girly profession and is more what you feel more comfortable with. But then during the school, actually teachers started to say, well, you are really good to maths and physics, and maybe you could try to see engineering to yourself as well. So then it opened a little bit my mind, and I started to look more into engineering actually. So it was like that. It was fluid, I think, the way that I went. Obviously, that I always had people more like outside of the school. I always have even my parents saying, "Oh, but engineering, this is like for men. As a men professional, you are always going to be working within men, and it's going to be quite hard for you. Are you sure that you want to do that?" But I was like, it's what I like to do, so let's try it at least and see how this goes.
Certainly when I was at school, there was not a lot of encouragement to go into STEM at all. To be honest, you know, when I finished junior school, I had no concept of you know, further education, or you know, going on to study further and what have you. It was, you know, get a job in manufacturing. There wasn't really much in the way of encouragement, and I'm hoping that that's now changed.
I was at school, I think it's 5 years now since I was in high school, doing that sort of choosing careers, and I can't say there was much encouragement. I know that some teachers have big impacts on you, and my product design teacher, because I chose that subject as one of my GCSEs, really pushed me. I was in a class full of boys, which you can imagine at 15 years old was definitely interesting. The only girl there as well again, and they really pushed me and really supported me with the engineering career choice that I wanted to do, because at that point I thought I was going to go on and do, you know, the traditional route with degree and things, and they really had a big impact on me, that they actually took an interest and took me seriously when I said I wanted to do it, not just like, oh, are you sure you want to do that? We did have a careers advisor, and my careers advisor said that, oh, with the skill set you've got, you should be a prison officer. And I was like, I want to be an engineer for that. I said I like science and maths, that's what I want to do, and put all these details into a computer and said, oh, it's come out with prison officer, that's not what you want to do. I was like,
that was pretty standard for everyone: prison officer and teacher, and possibly civil servant.
Yeah, it's all come out like that. So I was like, okay, so you're not taking me seriously what I want to say, what I want to do, but I hope it's changed since I've left. But I think it's important that, you know, Pell's does have an active role in I think that's where it starts, so isn't it, that building up that talent pool right from school, validating girls when they're interested in engineering and STEM, and really pushing them and saying, you can do this. And then if you get that support in place, then the talent pool will then increase, won't it? And you can hopefully then in the workplaces, hopefully the imbalance might go up a little bit. That's how I hope to see it.
My experience was a bit different. So I think my choice was hugely influenced by my dad, who also works in building industry. So I growing up knowing quite a lot about this industry actually, and I feel like structural engineer especially, we kind of really make people's lives better by contributing towards their dream houses and homes, you know, and we also contribute towards the city skyline. So the final products are there and will be there for like lots of years and for people all around the world to see it. So that's really interesting for me, and that's why I chose engineering to start with, I think. And talk about my educational background, because I came from China. So before high school, before sixth form, I was educated in China, and where we focused all about STEM subjects, to be honest. That was a bit different. We didn't really have much choice to explore other subjects. We were mainly focused on STEM subjects, so it was kind of natural for me to keep doing like math, physics kind of subjects when I came to the UK. And that really went well with my choice of doing engineering.
In the first instance, when I was younger, I used to like sort of trying to fix things and put things together. So that's my first sort of contact with, you know, being practical with your hands and that kind of stuff. But then also along the line, I used to notice that I would like just stand at a building and stare at it thinking, oh my gosh, like how is that even standing up? That doesn't make sense. And then along the line, sort of being okay with maths and science, I kind of enjoyed that. So I guess at the point when I was in year 9, I think Lambeth College came into our school and said, oh, there's an opportunity to do a BTEC course, either hairdressing or engineering. And I was like, okay, yeah, I get to be out of school at least once a week, and I get to play with things. That's what I thought. And engineering, that sounds really cool. So I went in there. I was the only female in my class, but nevertheless, I didn't shy away from that. I found that quite exciting actually, because, you know, being able to be the only female and do exactly what they're doing it really well. So that kind of sort of brought my sort of love for engineering, and then I decided actually I want to do engineering, but to understand exactly what type of engineering I wanted to do, I was a bit confused. Initially I was doing mechanical, and I thought actually I don't want to fix cars, that's a bit boring. Then I went and did civil engineering, and then that opened the world up to, you got your water, the geotechnics, and then your structures. So I felt like it was at the end of my degree that is when I actually understood actually what I really love is structural engineering, and hence why I'm a structural engineer today.
So I mean, how did you guys find actually getting into engineering? Because like for me, I don't have an engineering background, so I have an environmental earth sciences degree, but my dad was a civil engineer, so he designed bridges, and I was on site with him when I was 3, and I think it was the first time that I was on a civil engineering construction job while he was a resident engineer, and he talked to me about consultancy and things like that, so I knew a bit about it, but nobody at university talked to me about consultancy or consultancy being an option. And then when I graduated, admittedly I had an airline ticket to go around the world, so people didn't necessarily think I was ready for employment. But when I did want to get a job with consultants, I wrote to everybody, probably within about an hour drive of where I lived. Most companies didn't reply, 1 or 2 just declined, but nobody even picked up the phone to talk to me. And in the end, I was working as a temp somewhere else, and I condensed my working week with their permission down to 4 days and worked 4 really long days. And then I phoned up consultants near where I lived and said, can I come and work for you a day a week for free? And that's how I got my first experience. I used to work on Fridays for free in a consultancy, doing what I wanted to do. And And I'd made a deal myself because I couldn't get in. It took me this was 2 years after I graduated. I just couldn't get a job. And I made a deal with myself that if I couldn't get into the industry in 6 months, then I'd go off and do my master's. But I'd been earning for 2 years at that point, and I didn't want to go back to student debt and start all over again. And I was really lucky. I did 2 Fridays for free, and then they gave me a contract. And so within 6 weeks, I was in the industry. But it took 2 years to get there, and I could have given up in that time. So, did you guys face challenges actually making that transition from wanting to be an engineer, training to be an engineer, and then actually getting in through the doors to be an engineer?
I think I was quite lucky. To hear my story, and you may disagree. When I finished working, we were in our favourite R word, recession. When I finished studying even, we were in recession, so getting a job was a little bit difficult. And when I signed on with the job centre, they told me about something called a graduate apprenticeship scheme. And I thought, no harm in joining it. And it was run by the local university, and what they'd do is they'd get employers in from the town who were looking for people to come and make presentations. And one was by the local council. And that was, I spent 19 years working for them. So I started out similar to Maddie as a apprenticeship on a very, very low salary, and left there as an assistant PM. And during that time I worked on numerous major projects which have been built and up and running. So I got a lot of satisfaction out of being able to see a job that started from a piece of paper to actually up and running. I had a very non-traditional start into the engineering profession, if you will. I'm not a qualified engineer. If anything, I'm a transport planner.
Eugene, and what about you? Did you start with your father, or did you?
No, because he's a quantity surveyor. I didn't want to do quantity surveyor. I want to do pure structural engineering, to apply what I've learned from university directly to my job. So I knew from the beginning I wanted to do consulting. So when I was looking for jobs, I only applied to structural consulting companies, and it wasn't very easy, I would say, because I required a working permit to be able to work in the UK at that time. Not many, because consulting companies range from small companies to big international ones, and not a lot of companies were willing to give out visas. So I applied to a lot of them, but quite luckily I managed to get an offer from Pell. So I just joined directly. So I got the job I wanted to do. So I was really pleased and satisfied.
And how did you guys find it sort of starting out as a woman in an engineering company?
I have to say that when I started working for the council, I was in the engineering division, as they call it, and there were about 2 other ladies on the same floor as me, and one was an admin person, and the other was the road safety manager. So there was very, very high gender imbalance. And I remember going to my first meeting, and I was the only female, and I was the only non-white person. And I thought, hang on, what's all this about? At first I found it a little bit odd, but then I got used to it, and it's pretty much been the same most of my working life. And if there have been other women, it's been a very, very small proportion. It's very much still a male-dominated profession.
I found it hard, especially when, for me, it's like sometimes I realize that in a meeting with 20 people, you are the only woman, and that is a little bit strange, because I just think in the middle of so many other professions, because when we have like wider a meeting, a design team meeting, where you have architects, you have engineers, you have the client, you have so many other engineering as well disciplines, that you just think, why am I just the only one here? It's just so confusing. I don't understand why it's still that still keeps happening. Why is still just so one woman on in the middle of so many men, really. Not to talk about on site, because surely, I don't know if you have already experienced on site, because on site is even worse. That for sure.
Yeah.
That I'm not going to find anyone female, and that is like also it's like it's strange how there is no interest at all to someone that would share exactly what I like to, and being a female. And not be on site or on the office doing engineering. I just don't understand.
Have you ever experienced, I go out to site quite a lot, and I have done over the years, and I've had some interesting experiences or reactions because a woman has walked onto the construction site and they just weren't expecting it.
Yeah.
And have you found that, you know, you can see the reaction on their face and that shock, because it's like, but you're a woman, and it's like, yeah.
Yeah, I worked on site for about 3 months for work experience, and definitely when I was in the room, there was a difference in their behavior in a good way, because I was the only female in there. And to be honest, I appreciated it. I liked it, but it's just you cannot shy away from the fact that you stick out as like a sore thumb.
Yeah, definitely. But I think, as you say, once you've done it once or twice, it's like it doesn't bother you anymore. You might have it in the back of your mind that, hang on, I'm the only female here, but then you know you've got a job to do and you crack on with it. And I have to say, genuinely, I've had some really good laughs with working with all men teams.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I love my team.
I think you have to be comfortable with it, don't you? Because that's the situation you're going to be in a lot of the times. Like you, I mean, I would say the vast majority of my experiences on site have always been good. You know, people welcome you and you do your job. I have had a couple of occasions, I think I even had it in an interview once, where somebody asked me if I was prepared to get my hands dirty, because as a contaminated land consultant, one of the things you've got to do is log the soil. You've got to get your hands dirty. I mean, my sites tend to get dirty now, so I have gloves on, but like when I was in my early 20s, sometimes if I had a choice, I'd deliberately arrange the meeting on site. So I'd be in my riggers and I'd have my high vis on and my boiler suit and my hard hat, because I think sometimes people took me a little bit more seriously there than they would in a meeting room. I don't find that now as time's gone on, but I did 20 years ago when I was young, 20 and female. That was just, it was too much sometimes for them.
Oh yes, the poorly fitted PPE. But let's not go
I was going to say, but this is practical reality, isn't it? You know, have you guys, I mean, can you get the PPE you need? Do you find yourself having to adapt really strange boys PPE so that you can go out to site?
I used the same PPE jacket for my entire working life at Luton Borough Council, which is where I worked. And people said, do you never go on site? I was like, no, I keep my coat clean. But yeah, when it became mandatory to wear high-vis trousers, they're either too small or too big.
Yeah.
And then you'd end up looking like the Michelin woman.
When I started, they only had long jackets, and they used to come down to my knees, and when they were zipped up, I couldn't get over a 5-bar gate.
No, I had the same thing. But fortunately, when the newer jackets came, they had the zips at the top and bottom.
Yeah, I've got a bomber jacket now, which is shorter, so I don't get into trouble anymore.
I'm quite tiny, so my shoe sizes are like really small. And when I was trying to get my first pair of safety boots, oh my god, it took me ages to find them. They don't sell like all those small size PPEs everywhere. And when I went to site, if I forgot my PPE, Definitely
There's no hope.
Plastic bags on your
There's
feet.
no hope. Size 4 and downwards.
So true.
No, I had the opposite problem. My feet are too big, so I could never find the right size footwear. It was always just slightly too small or just slightly too big. So it was the extra pairs of socks.
And what about the helmet? Because for me, now the one that I have at the moment is actually fine, but I experienced many times that I would go to the tightest part of the helmets, and still it would be moving. So I actually would have to go like this to look up or down.
I thought it was just me.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
And like when you're on site, you need your hair up, but you can't get your hair up under a hard hat, and you're like,
Oh my gosh, yes. You have to do it up behind the hat and sieve it through the holes that you can find. Gosh.
It's a shame though that, you know, there's so much talk of wanting to get more females into the STEM related jobs and engineering and construction, and they don't cater widely for us with PPE, as everyone has mentioned. Like I think I've brought it up before with you. 90% of my site gear is all men's clothing, and it makes you feel like, you know, you just want to be catered for really, and recognise that, and you want something to fit you correctly if you're going to be in that for you know, a number of months, several years at a time, every day. And luckily I'm office based most of the time, but you want something to fit you correctly, and although we can laugh and joke about it, it's a proper issue, and I really wish that these companies would really recognise that and cater for us correctly.
There are some companies, but like you say, it's very, very tiny, that do offer women's safety gears. But because it's not widely available, people don't necessarily know about it.
And it's also way more expensive.
Exactly. 'Cause
Yes.
it's such a niche.
Yeah.
yeah. And I found sometimes now they're making the high-vis jackets, so they've got all like these cinched-in waists, and I'm like, it's still cold on site. I've got to get 3 jumpers under that. I don't need a cinched-in waist in my safety jacket.
Just want it to fit you.
I want it to be comfy, and I want to have 3 fleeces inside it.
Yeah, you want a jacket that's waterproof, windproof, and breathable, but you know, not so massive that, you know, you're like a child wearing grown-ups
Adults
clothes.
clothing, yeah.
Which is how I felt when I used to wear my PPE jacket, because it was
I still feel like that.
massive.
Yeah.
I think what I want to ask is if you feel any difference between being a man or a woman when you are at the office on your work environment, like the usual work environment inside of your company, or if you had in the past, if you have any experience.
I think, look, I'm quite lucky in the team that I'm in, and everyone's really friendly and treats me very similarly to the rest. But yeah, it was a little bit, like I said before, quite daunting going into that as a 16-year-old and not seeing the sort of role models or as such in the team. But I personally haven't experienced any sort of discomfort or issues, luckily, but I do feel like we need to, you know, address it to the younger girls. That, you know, there are people that will include you, that, you know, although it's quite daunting at first, like you've mentioned, a few of you mentioned earlier in the conversation, it is a bit worrying at first, but getting into it, you do settle in, and hopefully I hope that's the case for all the rest of you. And feel that way, that, you know, that people do treat you with respect, that do take you seriously after maybe a little bit of maybe putting on your PPE, like you said, Amy. But they can see you for not your gender, but you know, your skills and your passion for engineering, and not just for the fact that, you know, I've got long hair or my voice a bit higher than yours, or, you know, I mean, it's just. It's no different, is it? That's the thing.
Zainab, you said you really enjoyed being like the only woman when you were doing your training course. Do you still enjoy that sometimes? Have you found advantages, you know, all of you from being, you know, maybe in a minority within engineering?
Yes, actually. So yeah, I do still enjoy it. I see my gender as you know, it's neither here or there for me. But you can't but be reminded a lot of the time that actually you do, you know, you're one of so many. But in terms of opportunities, even as a black engineer, I wouldn't say necessarily I have, to be fair with you, but I guess one advantage of being a woman in engineering was I got a scholarship for my master's, so they paid for my tuition as well as my living costs, which was amazing, you know, that kind of stuff. And I guess also I got a bursary when I was in college, you know, coming from a BAME background, so that was useful. But aside from that, I feel like I do get treated the same as anyone else. I haven't felt any sort of discrimination against myself. I feel like, especially at Pels, like it really does come down to, are you a good engineer? Can you get the job done?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair, pretty fair to say. You know, it's one of the few places where I found that, you know, it doesn't matter who you are, it's can you do what you're here to do, and are you doing what you're here to do, and you know you're also, you know, encouraged and pushed along and so on. I mean, I spent quite a few years in my last job in the same grade. Within 2 years, I went from assistant PM to a PM in Pell Frischmann, and you know, I didn't think I was doing anything spectacularly different than what I used to do. So there's definitely a lot of support and encouragement.
When I first joined PAL, the first team I joined, I was the only woman, and in my peer, I was also the only woman. But people were really nice treating me, and often when I step into the office, like what I notice is like they are much more gentle to me and a bit more polite than what they would do if there were only just men in the room. Yeah, I didn't find any disadvantages or anything like that working with them. But to be honest, because I'm lucky enough to work in a team where we have 3 women, so I can kind of tell the difference, not on the professional level, but on the daily communication level. Yeah. It's much more easier, and you kind of find something in common that you want to share and discuss outside work. So it makes me feel more relaxed and you know, true. Just to be more to have someone, you know, have the same identity with you, just, you know, to share the recognition together, and you understand each other much better. So I really enjoy that. So I hope we can have more women colleagues joining and have a good like gender balance within teams. That would be good.
Yeah. I think that's something that does need to happen, but it's going to be it's got to be a natural progression, and it can't be, oh, let's just chuck more women in because they're women. Yeah. It's got to be because you're good at what you do, regardless of your gender, and you know, in certain countries they push quotas and all that sort of stuff, and I can see the advantages of it, but I think the bigger thing is something like that can potentially cause resentment, and you know, sometimes it can be difficult enough to get into quite a male-dominated profession as it is, so why put up more barriers?
I feel like in order for it to happen organically, you know, you have to start it really young, you know, connect with the younger people at such young ages, so they understand actually there is a possibility. You don't have to be, you know, a civil servant or a doctor. There's an engineering world out there, and you know, if you slowly foster it into students and children's minds that there's this opportunity there for them, I feel as they grow up to go through the education system, they will start to explore the different possibilities. So definitely, I'm such a big advocate for going into schools, you know, at primary schools and that kind of stuff. I know I'm sure everyone else is, you know, just trying to nurture it into their minds at such a young age, you know, and children soak up things really quickly. So I believe
do.
that's
They
probably
do.
where it happens more organically, rather than actually, oh, she's a woman, let's just get her in because she's, you know.
Yeah.
And have you noticed engineering changing? Like you guys have already mentioned it a little bit, but I've really noticed in the past couple of years, like when I started in Pels, I think there were 120 of us in the office, and all of the support staff were women. And then out of the engineers, there were 5 of us that were women. And as you guys have said, you know, you'd be in a meeting and you're going to be the only one every time. But in the last 12 months, I can't tell you the number of times, just like today, I've looked at my screen and we're all women. And I love it. Some of our clients are women. The people that are giving us the work and the people that we're working with are women. The people that we are collaborating with are women. And just more and more now, when I look up at a screen when we're on a Teams call, and I can just see all women are there. And one of the things that I've really found, and you guys have already mentioned it really today, I think we really enjoy collaborating with each other. You know, I think women now are finding other women in engineering, and we're building collaboration, and I think we work in a really collaborative way, and I think we enjoy finding each other. And I've been really enjoying seeing the change, or, you know, experiencing that and seeing more women, you know, working alongside people. Do you guys feel those changes? Do you see those evidence of that change?
I was going to say not so much, because most of my dealings with clients is probably 90% male. I might even go up to 95%. But you know, that's just. I mean, highways has always been very much male dominated, and probably will continue to be so for a few years more. But it's slowly changing, but very slowly. I think some of the other engineering disciplines are a bit more open.
Well, for me, I think on structures, I start to feel that there is much more women on this field. And I start to see that, for example, in Pell Frischmann, I think I never had so many female colleagues as in Pell Frischmann. And then even when you look to on websites, and if you have any advertisement about any building that are being built, you start to see a lot the image of a man and a woman side by side, like chatting and looking at the calculations together and doing the works together. So I start to see at least like much more advertisements and women included on all that engineering, at least for buildings. So yeah, I feel that there is some improvement.
Yeah, you're right. The marketing has definitely changed on encouraging or at least showing women working on site in their high vis, or you know, someone standing over their shoulder in front, you know, at a computer or whatever. It's definitely changed.
Yes, and I think that helps a lot, especially for the people that are still deciding what to do with if they should go to engineering or not. So, and then they start to have some reference, and if they start to see more female on that group, it looks like, oh, okay, so it's fine. I also can try it. So it's not as my parents used to say that it's just a man job, because it's not anymore. So I see some improvement, definitely.
I think I'm going to raise the C word and say COVID. I think that there's going to be a generation of people that are going to have missed out on careers fairs, on, you know, visits by you know, STEM ambassadors, or you know, or just general school presentations. And I think that's quite unfortunate, and there's a potential for a lot of people, or you know, or a lot of young girls and ladies to miss out on seeing those positive role models when it's such a crucial time in your educational life, and you know, making your decision about your future. And I think that's a massive shame.
To be fair, there are still organisations. So I work with an organisation called Associations of Black Ethnic Engineers, and they do a lot of work with different types of schools. And even with this pandemic, we've been doing a lot of stuff online, you know. So yeah. So it's been difficult, but we are literally just trying to keep up the momentum. With, as you said, it is vital. It's not fair that they lose out on something they can't control. So, but it has declined. So you're right. You are right.
Yeah.
Engineering aside, how have you all found being female during the pandemic? Have you felt like you've had any disadvantage? I know that there's a few different facts and figures that have been circulated amongst us in the last few days. I don't know if I've had a chance to read them, but you know, women, according to the Institute of Fiscal Studies, women have been 1.5 times more likely to have lost their job due to COVID than men within the last year. And also women took on 78% more childcare than men during the first lockdown. And I don't know if any of you have children and have felt I can see some nodding heads and shaking heads, but and how have you felt as a mother during the pandemic? Have you felt at a disadvantage to men? Have you been homeschooling? Have you felt like you've had to take time away from work or productivity away from work?
Okay, so I'm a mum. I have 2 girls. I have a 6-year-old and I have an 8-year-old. And I was so grateful to I have to say, so grateful to my husband when the pandemic started, because he runs his own business. And you know, when the announcements start happening, and like in January this year, when they said, right, we're locking down again, you could see us just pause and look at each other and go, right, who's going to bag work first, you know, and who's going to take the childcare, what's polite, what isn't polite to say. And so my husband and I have worked shifts. So I've been getting up early in the morning and starting work while everybody's asleep. And then my husband's been getting up with the children and doing the homeschooling in the morning. And then he goes to work. He can't work from home. He has to go to the workshop. So he goes to work in the afternoon. And then the kids have been a little bit older now in the second lockdown compared to the first. So in the afternoon, I'm juggling work, conference calls, 2 children, trying not to let them eat too many inappropriate snacks, maxing out on Disney Plus to try and get through the process. And then my husband stays at work till 2 o'clock in the morning. So Dave and I haven't really seen each other for very much over like the last 12 months, really. But I've just been so lucky that it hasn't come down to me to do the homeschooling, and we really have shared looking after the girls. I'm incredibly grateful for that. But I have to say that juggle is really, it's hard work, and you just, the mummy guilt. I don't feel guilty for being a working mum. You know, I think I'm a better mum because I work. And the girls, I love the fact the girls can see my husband and I have completely different careers. We both do completely different things. We've got into things with completely opposite routes. And I just love the fact that it shows the girls choice. I don't mind what they do. I just want them to know that there's choice. And I do definitely tackle the world differently now that I'm a mum of 2 girls. I feel that it's important that they have that choice and they have that freedom. It's been amazing. But the mummy guilt in lockdown has just reached a whole new level, really. Just trying to juggle everything. And for me, you know, I'm a team leader. I lead a specialism within the company. So my clients don't stop just because I'm a mum and I've got 2 kids to look after. So it's just a juggle. And to be honest, there's no right answer. It just gets a bit messy. So you just have to ride it out.
I do think there's been a mix of opinions on sort of like the work-life balance. I know I've been in meetings where you know, little so-and-so has come in and said mummy or daddy, or you know, they've got something and they want to share it with mummy and or daddy, and then, you know, you've got this parent apologising, and I was thinking, and I've said to them quite a few times, look, don't apologise. They're kids. Kids don't have boundaries. Certainly my niece doesn't. I've heard stories of where she's got, my brother's working from home, and she sort of goes into his room and says, "Who are you talking to?" And she wants to have a conversation with. So if she was here now, she'd be sitting right next to me, and she'd be chattering away to you guys, no problem. But you know, I think it's very, very. I hear lots of people saying, you know, they, like you, Amy, they've been doing split shifts. So you know, one parent does the morning shift, and one parent does the afternoon shift. I think a lot of parents are very, very happy schools have reopened.
Yeah, I mean it's great for people who are obviously with their partners, but not being able myself, obviously. But I can only imagine how tough it must be as a single parent, a single mother, to try and take that on. Coming at you with the facts again. 18% of women reduced their hours, and 7% took unpaid leave. Just to cope with the childcare and the implications that the pandemic has had with that loss of childcare with school, and you can only just, you know, great sympathies for them, and you think how incredibly strong they must have been to get through that. They might have even lost their jobs, you know, trying to cope through that time. It must have been just incredibly hard for them. So I'm glad that you managed to balance it quite good, Amy, but you know, it's just important to recognise that obviously some people might not have had that so smoothly. It's awful, isn't it, to think about?
Yes. I've got some friends that are single parents, and they've got 2 children, and the jobs don't stop and the bills don't stop, so you do have to make that balance. I think one of the things that I found really useful, and it comes down to what you were saying about Mita, really, is I stopped apologising for being a mum. I think that was just so important.
There's no need, absolutely no need. You know, if you've got, you know, family responsibilities, whether it's children or adults, or you know, whatever. You know, everybody's got care responsibilities, and if you don't, well, I'm sorry for you.
Yeah, some of my clients have met both of my daughters, with and without dinosaurs, dolls, teddy bears. You never quite know what's going to appear. I have a blue dinosaur on my desk now. I think
it adds a little bit of colour, and you know, it's quite a difficult time, and you know, if a young one wandering into the picture and waving said toy brings a smile, I see no harm. Obviously, if you're having a confidential conversation and, you know, commercially sensitive, then it's a little bit tricky, but by and large, you know, something like that, I say bring it on.
I was just going to say, I've really enjoyed talking to all of you today. It's so lovely to see everybody's different experiences and to see how it is. And Maddie, I've really enjoyed sort of hearing your perspective, because obviously you're coming into this industry sort of decades after I have. And it's
definitely.
It's really good. I've absolutely loved it, and I think you've raised some really valid points, you know, about, I think as I've spent longer in the industry, I feel like I have more of a responsibility. I don't think I felt a responsibility 20 years ago necessarily to help women come in, because I was still trying to find my own feet. But I think now,
I think so.
You know, when you said, you know, like you saw a woman's did in that careers fair, and that made it accessible to you, and saying you're doing loads of like amazing stuff. I think it's just so important, isn't it, that we reach out and bring in the next generation. And as you say, it's just the earlier the better, isn't it? So they know that option's there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's been amazing. Thank you ever so much. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Me too.
Great. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Speak
Thanks.
soon.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
See you later. Bye.
Bye. Bye.